Yeah, so I've been looking forward to these two poets. I'm going to introduce them both at once, and just going to read first. I've been looking forward to bringing them together since maybe 4 years ago when I encountered Chen's first book and immediately effused something like 2,000 words on it for the Yale Review, and I'll get back to his work in a minute. And I've been looking forward to hearing Angie Estes read since something like 2003 when I encountered this. So the universe is not blue after all, not even green, but beige, because the stars are older than we thought, but it is sad. Is it sad? Is it sad, even sadder than we knew? Describe the sound of doves. Is it coo, 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 or hoo, hoo, who? The French would say it's rue, rue, rue. And in Italy, it would be summer, morning, already brocade, Cecilia Bartoli, gargling. Who could do that? I don't mean gargle, I mean write that. Who else in the history of English poetry could have done that? There were hints in this new poet called Angie Estes, who had like a third book coming out, and I was reading a packet of things for a regional prize. Hints in this Angie Estes person of medievalizing macaronic verse, combining native and acquired European languages in the manner of John Skelton, of Marianne Moore circa The Steeplejack, of Jory Graham circa Erosion. Check out those enjambments. But they were just hints. Nobody else could put those kinds of sounds together or make such filigreed beauty, such rococo structures spiraling into tragic wisdom. No one else could and no one else had, and Estes has done it over and over since Chez Nous, her third book, which contained that poem called Kind of Blue. She did it in Triste. She did it in Enchantee. She did it in Parole. You may have detected a pattern in her titles, which highlight her engagement with the beauties and the polyglot lives and art and histories of France and Italy. And you may also have detected her vaults, uneven parallel bars, and floor routines worth of sound play, none of it lacking emotional force, in mourning or in a kind of erotic invitation. Since the sound comes first, it can take a few listens or reads to see how much sorrow she carries, how much she needs from the art and the artfulness that she views. Maybe you need it too. I wish I could do this. Yours is a noble bio, one note played by an oboe, loon, lone, loin. The note is a lonely one, of course, and that note resounds through the poem. And if you read more of the poems, especially if you read Parole, which I think you can buy right over here, with its high proportion of parental elegy, that genuine and unsnobbish, again like Marianne Moore, tropism toward elaborate high culture, toward ornament, toward the self-consciously beautiful, finds consistent counterweights in extremely American basements, bald tires on cars, in the all-too-ordinary rhythms of what feels like an Appalachian or else a mid-Atlantic life full of early loss, where the water in the corn pot boils, someone is slapped, and summer rain splatters as you go out to slop the hogs. Notice those euphonies, as dense as anyone's, denser than Swinburne's, in fact, and of course more compact than his. Corn pot, splat, splatter, slap, out, slop, hogs. Nobody has that ear. She's the Paganini of English phonemes, or if you prefer, the Tom, not the Paul, but the Tom Verlaine. The language is her instrument, and she plays it not meaninglessly, not for trills and arias, as much as she loves trills and arias, but for appreciation, anxiety, sorrow, even erotic joy, for keeps. As for Chen Chen, you have likely encountered some of the emotional life in his poems, which he wears on the surface in these self-consciously frame-breaking long lines and casual-seeming prose. You just discover you're surrounded by it. And you've possibly encountered emotions rarely represented outside the internet, rarely represented in serious poems. Emotions we see more often than we read about them. A shrug, a comic riposte, a what? A pivot from the embarrassment of intrusive or uncomprehending or outright homophobic parents to a proud rather than sheepish grin. He's not afraid to be silly, but he can be killingly serious or righteously angry as well. And the poems can show why he or we should be, since they stand against internalized homophobia and against a kind of internalized, racialized shame, as well as against the socially disseminated, officially authorized prejudices that obviously, or at least it should be obvious, are still getting people killed. And also he's fun. Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. There are at least 20 more in there. I stopped counting That's less than half the number in the middle of his terrific Ode to My Beloveds and Brevities, whose opening list also includes beautiful jorts and beautifuler pug breaths, and the best of Sandra Bullock and a slice of watermelon bursting between the teeth of a boy in a bathtub and an unmistakably Ren Hang photograph. I had to look up who Ren Hang is, and I recommend that you do that too. Like Ren Hang, Chen Chen's poetry is simultaneously inviting and embarrassing and homoerotic and intimate, and it works as hard as it can to celebrate who he is and what he has, including the dog in that poem, our little never bashful buddy. But we're trained to be bashful, right? To fear what our mothers might say if they saw, or else we are trained to confess, to make poetry out of our fears and self-accusations. And that training looks to Chen Chen like, in one of his fantastic titles, just the school of more school. Instead, he writes poems that flip shame the bird, that talk back to his mother, that invite us into his beds once he's left them, even while telling us who, and it's not you, belongs in those beds. Why should we ever leave this bed or these breaths? But John Donne there, these long breaths that the poems barely pause for. I love these poems with a fondness that's equaled easily only by Frank O'Hara, who sometimes I think stands behind them. These poems that belong to the school of joy as well as to queers in the most flattering shorts, which are not jorts, that protect our overexposed hearts with a lavish amount of bubble wrap. And Angie Estes is so good that it feels like a letdown to shift from describing her sonic play to her biography. But I think I need to do that before you get to hear her. She's going to read first. I honestly have no idea where she grew up. I've been afraid to ask. It's like not. Do you want to say? Yeah. Okay. Okay. I was going to guess kind of mid-Atlantic, if not Appalachian, like maybe Western Maryland or DC suburbs. Yeah, okay. Anyway, now we know where she grew up. As a matter of public record, we know she attended the University of Oregon, where she earned a PhD in English. She's taught at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, at Oberlin, at Ohio State, and at Ashland University, and she currently lives in Illinois. Her stack of awards includes an NEA Fellowship, the Kingsley Tufts Award, a Guggenheim, a Pushcart Prize, and a Lannan Foundation grant. She has also been a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize. Chen Chen has won a Pushcart Prize, a Tom Gunn Award, an NEA Fellowship, and a United States Artist Award, as well as the intense admiration of lots of people younger than me on the internet, which is really cool. I sometimes yell at people like older than me about how great Chen Chen is, and I don't know, but like everyone should. It's really cool. He attended I'm so enthusiastic about these poets that I've lost my consonant clusters. He attended Newton North High School right across the river, Hampshire College, and Syracuse University before earning his PhD in English and creative writing from Texas Tech. He currently teaches at Brandeis University. His second book is a stunner, and you should pick it up over there along with Angie's books. And today I discovered that one of his co-editors on one of the journals that he edits, an online journal, is an obscure Sanrio character who is, as I once was, a sad egg. I give you Angie Estes and then Chen Chen. And I think you're going to read for 25 each, and then there will be some Q&A time if you want it. Thank you. I'm so excited.
I'm not sure I can match that introduction, actually. Thank you incredibly much. It is such a joy to be here, and that was an incredibly generous introduction. Thank you so much, and thanks to all of you for coming. It's terrific. I know there's tons. Do I need to turn this on? Do I have it on?
It's on, it's on.
Oh, because this isn't on. Turn it on. Now is it on? Yes. It's on now. Okay. Let me know if it's not. Thanks to all of you for coming, old friends, people I haven't seen in a long time. It's really great to be here with you. And it's great to be reading with Chen. Looking forward to that. Need my glasses. I'm going to read mostly new poems, but but before that, there's a poem that I often like to. I think maybe both of these are on. Turn that off. Okay. Better. Okay. Right. I just have a tendency to go like this when I'm reading. So. Anyway, I'll read mostly new work, but I want to start with a poem from an earlier book, which Stephanie mentioned. And it's a poem that I often like to start with because it reminds me of where poems live and why we go there. It's also, speaking of where poems live, the cover that's on this book is one of my favorite photographs, and it's Peggy Guggenheim in 1940, standing in the apartment of her friend on the Ile Saint-Louis in Paris. And what's great about it that I love and has to do with where poems live is that she's got basically all of the essentials of life here. Okay, she's wearing this sort of plastic, see-through, zip-up dress. She's got her cigarettes. She's got down here in the corner her alcohol bottles. There's, of course, art on both sides. But most important is that there's, of course, this huge window, which you might not be able to see too well. But as soon as the window comes in, then there's this kind of telescope, sort of zoom camera effect, which makes it very much like the poem then, because it's moving from here to this other place. And what's even more interesting for me is that what you see through the window is Notre Dame. And Notre Dame, of course, again, I don't know if you can see this, but the vaults that are going down are sort of like this hand grabbing the earth, and the spire, of course, this is Notre Dame when it was still Notre Dame, and the spire going directly up, so that there's incredible tension. So you've got the sort of the telescoping back and forth, and then you've also got this sort of very medieval sort of sense that the world can be read, and that by focusing on the things here in the world, that somehow there's this kind of anagogical elevator that sort of goes up and down. So you've got all of this movement going on together with this incredibly modern sort of whatever she's doing here. But anyway, but I love that. So anyway, I'll just read a poem from this book. Actually, the first poem. If you're a fan of the great film star of the 30s and 40s, Rita Hayworth, you know undoubtedly the film that she's most famous for, Gilda. And this poem opens with some lines from that film. And along with Rita Hayworth, whose real name was Rita Cancino, co-starring in the poem is St. Augustine. Okay, so you can see this is the first poem in the book. And that's why I picked the picture, because again, you've got this sort of movement and this sort of tension between the 40s film star and St. Augustine, who happens to co-star here. The poem has an epigraph, which again, the poem, it opens with some lines of Gilda's from the film, and it also has an epigraph that are lines that she speaks. And the epigraph reads, "If I'd been a ranch, they would have called me the Bar Nothing." True confessions. I can never get a zipper to close. Maybe that stands for something. What do you think? I think glamour is its own allure. Thrashing and flashing, allure, a spoon, as in spooning, as in Lamour in Scotland, where I once watched the gorse-twisted hills unzip to let a cold blue lake between them. St. Augustine says the reason why humans behave as they do is because they're not living in their true home. In Rita Hayworth's first film, for example, Dante's Inferno is a failing Coney Island concession And Margarita Cancino plays the part of Rita Cancino, playing herself. And the true home of glamour, by which I mean, of course, the grammar of glamour, is Scotland, because glamour is a Scottish variant of grammar with its rustle of moods and desires. Which brings us back to the zipper and why we want it to close. Each hook climbing another, the way words ascend a sentence, trying on its silver suture, like clothes. In a satin strapless gown, Gilda slowly peeled off her black arm-length gloves, showed how to strip down, diagram a sentence, put the blame on Mame boys. In 1946, a pinup of Rita Hayworth and the name Gilda rode on the side of the atomic bomb tested at Bikini Atoll. It was summer, and you could buy a record, hear the sound of her beating heart. By her last film, The Wrath of God, her hair was a burning bush. She couldn't remember her lines, whether it's memory or loss we're in need of most, to remember the way home or forget who we are when we get there. Every man I have known has fallen in love with Gilda and wakened with me. St. Augustine asked, "But when I love you, what do I love?" He asked the earth and the breeze, perfume, song, flesh, the sun, the moon and stars. The question was the attention I gave to them, and their response was their beauty. In a few of these new poems that I'll read, the title of the poem is actually part of the first line of the poem also. The swallows come out like stars, wallowing in the dim evening light, because in the country of blue, at times even the borders of the heart are the borders one needs to leave. So I waited at the airport, a woman beneath a sign that said, "Gate B, hold." What Eloise and Abelard must have been feeling when they named their son Astrolabe, an instrument for determining one's position in the universe. The room where they met in secret was not far from Pont Neuf, the new bridge, which is the oldest bridge in Paris. And like the French grammatical liaison, it puts something hard, something voiced between two vowels, like the sound you make when I am finally inside you. It's the way scientists knew they had discovered a new group of blue whales. They were singing a song no one had ever heard. Inside Hagia Sophia, above the southwest entrance, Justinian, on the left of the Virgin in the mosaic, offers her Hagia Sophia, which holds the mosaic. On the right, Constantine holds out to her Constantinople, which contains Hagia Sophia. Small African birds, known as honey guides, skilled at locating beehives but unable to break into them to feed, attract humans with a call and then lead the way. For 3 million years, people have opened and emptied the hives, leaving just enough for the birds to keep them coming back to call again, like some almost immaculate conception or mise en abîme, in which one places a copy of an image within the image itself to make an infinite sequence. Signs posted in the Paris metro say, "Attentif ensemble," reminding us to be watchful together, apparently against the appearance of whoever is not watchful with us. Remember when we used to be able to call collect, sometimes even person to person? And there was a party line, not the one we'd have to walk, but the one we'd listen in on. holding the hard black receiver to the ear was like watching Della Francesca's Madonna del Parto unbutton her dress, only to find inside another Madonna unbuttoning her dress. Like watching the dead flying like wild geese through fog. There, not there. There, not there. Not there. Yet all the while, you hear them. Yours truly. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Every book I had ever read came back to read me, along with the 474,500 migrating birds that, according to Birdcast, have crossed over Champaign County, flying south so far tonight. American redstarts, Swainson's thrushes, gray catbirds, white-crowned sparrows, rose-breasted grosbeaks. Even now, 325,500 birds are in flight at an altitude of 1,700 feet and a speed of 27 miles per hour. While across the Atlantic at Paris Fashion Week, two men waving canisters of Fabricant's liquid fiber circle and spray a dress onto an almost naked model. When the white downy sheath is complete, another woman steps forward and shapes shoulder straps with her hands, sliding them off the shoulders before cutting a slit up one leg from floor to thigh. Still, so many questions. Will I love you forever or leave you forever? And will forever be long enough to do both? Like Huck, I reckon I got to light out for the territory, out where you knew the way to my house, the way a blood clot knows the way to a heart. There's a vous in this next poem, and it's the French the vous, and it's the formal one that you'd use for someone that you don't know well. The present was tense. The past was here. The air so warm and waft, you could toss it around your neck like a scarf, like the lambs from the island of Ouessant off the coast of Brest. Pré-salé, salt meadow, fed on sea-salted grass so that their flesh becomes tender while their hearts are still pumping. According to the Talmud, there are 4 things which it is better to wish you had never been born than to think on: what's above, what's below, what's behind, what's ahead. But still, on the hills above Otsuki, on the coast of northern Japan, with an old-fashioned black telephone connected to nothing, nowhere, the living make phone calls to the dead, just as God himself, when he's alone, sits way up in the top corner bird's nest seats of the Opera Garnier in Paris, from where he sees the stage only if he stands and leans to the side and sings, "Vous me," with that voodoo that you do so well. This poem makes reference to a shopping list that Galileo made when he was living in Padua and planning to over to Venice. Privilege for the vocabulary. Among random entries scattered on Galileo's shopping list for making a telescope, something specific but not relevant for the instrument. and by no means something you could shop for, like Tosca's dress, which you're redesigning for a more voluptuous soprano, just as you let out the seams of this poem. Oh, reason not the need, and I know not seems, but still one wants to know what kind of thing this thing is. Turns out it's not a song by Cole Porter, but a reminder to obtain the authorization to publish the first dictionary, vocabulario, of the Italian language, a privilegio attached to the list as if it were a ledge to hold on to or jump off of, as if just the right word, le mot juste, could split open the heavens the way you open beneath me and speak rapid Russian phrases that I, a woman stitched to earth in one warm language, will never know the meaning of. Spring. Everything is in such a hurry, even though I'm sure Faulkner was right when he said, the past is never dead, it's not even past. One day the serviceberry tree flashes red and yellow with cedar waxwings, and the next, nothing but leaves. The squirrel lies in a bright red halo of blood on the asphalt, its right arm still running, even as the halos of martyred Saints Cosmos and Damian keep rolling with their heads in Fra Angelico's painting. If they were in Japan, they could be put back together like broken pieces of porcelain, kintsugi, repaired with a thick seam of lacquer and gold. The past could be morning sky or evening sky, even evensong, golden caviar on buttered toast, as if Louvre and velour had suddenly turned into each other. The past is so unwilling to stay where we put it that we had to give it its own conjugated tense, past imperfect, in which no matter what may happen, the past continues, as in Je désirais, the condition was never ending. I'll read a poem now, which was actually at the beginning of the manuscript when it started. I have a series of poems that take their titles from a questionnaire that was very popular at the end of the 19th century in France, and that Proust actually answered a couple of times. And people continue to use it today, right, on things like the Actors Studio and French TV show, Apostrophe, they sometimes end with it. Anyway, I'll just read one of them, and of the ones that he responded to. The titles are in French. This is Le Pays où je désirerais vivre, which just means the country I would like to live in. Terra, cara, terroir. In the open mouth of the wind, blue-black, from all the kites it has eaten, blown back like the past, where the family lives, in Alexandre Dumas' Le Chevalier d'Armental, 5 Rue de Temps Perdu. In the about-to-bloom history of wisteria, twisting while the soft gray paws of pussy willow boom suddenly above me, a thunderhead nods, like Mary at the Annunciation, recalling how Abraham said, the journey is within, from inside us to inside us, numam a numam. Where else could they be headed in Tarkovsky's Nostalgia, when the chest of the Virgin Mary flies open to release the beating doves? Celtic Peregrini wandered in thin places, sites in landscape where the borders between this place and some other, past and present, feel most fragile, begin to fray the way bison painted on walls in the Grotte de Nil move in and out of rock as if it were a membrane between worlds. Out back, the mourning dove bobbing in the bird bath, one wing unfurled and hoisted on its mast, doesn't even think about sailing home. She's somewhere between Pavlov and Pavlova. I'll read just three more poems. The title of this poem is an English translation of the Italian tempo notation that appears later in the poem. Slowly, but not too much, as if making your way through an alphabet, beginning with alpha, as if you stood in front of the Arcimboldo paintings in Vienna and someone said, "Spring is in the Louvre. Springtime is in Paris." Sometimes we were word for word, sometimes unspeakable, like the painted stone angel in Dijon, who has been grieving silently over the Passion of Christ since the end of the 14th, beginning of the 15th century, as if someone had said to her, "Adagio, ma non tanto." Think of the joy of making it onto the train before it departs, or the sudden blossom of what's possible when you arrive a minute late and watch it pull out of the station. Behind her, the angel's wings remain unfurled, as if they still might fly. She wears her favorite color, chipstone blue. My favorite is Omega Mei, and yours, Venetian red and vanishing. Eternity will be that fondled them when they were fire, will gleam and understand to breathe my blank without thee. Abbreviate me, this and this, gaze for which I cease to live, a firmament for all afternoon and the west and the gorgeous nothings which compose the sunset keep. No is the wildest word we consign to language. And this last poem that I'll read is actually a very, very new poem, and it's actually from some new unknown manuscript on its way. I love to think of John Cage before he was John Cage, when he landed a job leading tourists through famous places he himself had never seen. At Versailles, for example, he read the guidebook the night before and mapped out which rooms to visit, made up the stories to tell, how the royals used to ice skate in the marble courtyard, what God could see looking through the Œil de Bœuf window into the antechamber between the king's bedroom and the queen's. And as they all walked through the hall of mirrors, he recited the words that Louis XIV used to say to his mistress in the Grand Trianon. We celebrated every moment of our trysts as an epiphany, long before Tarkovsky wrote them. The tourists must have felt much like I did, returning home after months in France to see that my neighbor, who died before I left, still had a sign in her front yard saying, "Gone solar," and to read the voicemail transcription of my old friend's midnight call telling me she had had a stroke. I'm having an incredible time in the hot dog world experience. That's the amazing thing about French. You can always ask, ça veut dire? What does it want to say? Is it rapture or raptures of the deep? As the tour ended, they all strolled away on the paths outside the palace, walking on tiny fragments of teeth, bone, and long-gone passing meteors, now known as sediment, which we could just as easily call sentiment. Lately, I've been listening to the many recordings on YouTube of John Cage's 4 minutes, 33 seconds, considering how many ways there are to play nothing. like the song the dead know by heart, not song of the day, but song if the day. Thank you.
That was wonderful. Thank you, Angie, for those poems. Do I need to turn this on or should I just use this? Okay. I made a plan and now I keep changing it. I think I will start with this poem called Doctor's Note, which I wrote while in grad school. And I really didn't want to go to class that week. So I was talking to my partner, and he was like, you should just tell them you're dead. Just like, you're dead this week, you'll be better next week, better than ever. So that's what happened. What do you need to know for this poem? Coldplay is a band. I think they still make music. Buffy is Buffy the Vampire Slayer, who it's a show about a girl in Southern California, and she fights vampires and other demons, a lot of other kinds of demons. Doctor's Note. Please excuse Chen Chen from class. He is currently dead. He came in last Thursday, exhibiting clear signs of dying, such as saying in a clear voice, I am nothing except the wish to listen to Coldplay. And after one too many plays of their 2002 hit, The Scientist, he is dead. Though few have improved from this condition, Chen Chen has been prescribed long baths in chicken stock and more recent music. Also, some rudimentary Tai Chi early each morning in his room with the curtains drawn. Medically speaking, Chen Chen's current state is very gross. It would be unwise, however, to try to force Chen Chen physically or with the promise of new Buffy episodes back into life. It would be unwise and gross to reach out to Chen Chen's parents. They are not his emergency contacts and have exhibited clear signs of wishing he were dead, such as saying in a clear voice, you'd be better off dead, better than whatever you are with other men. Of course, after learning of Chen Chen's death, they fell to their knees into a state commonly referred to as utter devastation. And it was, in a medical sense, satisfying to hear of their utter devastation. But studies show that this state is ultimately bupkis. Studies predict that if Chen Chen recovers, it will take around 3 months for his parents to find his fully restored state unsatisfying. Or if he remains his remains, they will find themselves fully content with the memory of Chen Chen, their sweet Chen Chen, before he became so whatever he was. They will think of him so fondly while sharing a bowl of strawberry ice cream, the last thing they remember him loving. Thank you, Stephanie, for that introduction. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you all for being here. This next poem is very much about Newton North High School, those years, a little earlier. But yeah, Newton, Massachusetts is important in this poem. This is called The School of Fury. As Robert Frost said, the best way out is always through. Or as Alanis Morissette said, the only way out is through. Or as I said, 8th grade was all Robert Frost and Alanis Morissette, because I had to learn who the important white people were. And we worship immigrant hardship instead of building a house more breathable. to read and remember and know and say so without the echo of an accent. When the white kids knew nothing about Marilyn Chin, when the white adults knew nothing about Lawson Fusao Inada, when the 30-something white guy in poetry class says, a poem is this, based on what a 70-something white guy once said. And everyone just nods, and I want to say no and scream, and would Frost have called me a chink? And take everyone through the wound of it, through the cat with a hummingbird in its mouth, through my much-desired, never-fulfilled Halloween costume, which was the wheel from Wheel of Fortune, through the night my father came to pick me up from a friend's house, through the early fall sidewalk, through Newton, Massachusetts, outside Boston, inside whiteness, through my enjoyment of the West Wing with white friends, through my father knocking on the wrong door, the neighbor's door, through the neighbor's door where you can hear them whispering, deciding to call the police, because who is the man at the door calling in a strange voice? Through my father almost getting arrested for trying to retrieve his son, through later in the car, my father insisting, you gave me the wrong address. Through don't ever give me the wrong address again. Through my imitations of Frost in 8th grade, which my teacher called impeccable. Throughout the town, on every doorstep except ours, a little family of carved pumpkins. Through the happy, happy wounds of their faces. Through why don't you try not going to the wrong house next time. Through hugging my white friends goodbye, yeah, see you in class, because nothing was wrong. So throughout this book, there are poems that are just titled by seasons. So there are a bunch called Summer, there are a bunch called Winter, and that came out of living in West Texas, having grown up in New England, and being bewildered by the lack of seasons, at least for me. So this is called Summer. Your emergency contact has experienced an emergency. The Texas sun shines hard on everything like a detective. You hide out eating every meal from microwavable cans. Sometimes you're studying abroad and ask the kitchen table where to find the closest subway station. Sometimes the kitchen table replies, by the family of cockroaches in the bathroom. Other times, language is the last thing you should learn more of. The cockroach family nods. The Texas sky changes color like a vast PowerPoint, very proud of itself. You feel like a cockroach, except you know how to use the microwave. Sometimes every living thing just sounds like, please. Other times, please don't. Please no. The mother cockroach says, in the event of a sudden loss of cabin meaning, backup meanings will drop from the overhead compartment. The Texas moon shines like a misplaced clue. Please grab hold of a meaning and pull it to your face. Your kitchen table shines back, an unsolvable station. Please hold, pull close. And this is one called Winter. You become increasingly indoorsy. In the middle of Coco and Tori Amos, you remember your mother calling back once after you hung up on her. She said, you're just like me, saying things you don't mean when you're angry. At the time, you agreed with her, liked being like her, or that she thought, said you were. This afternoon, you believe another nap will solve all your life problems, when everyone knows naps are better suited for tackling geopolitics. In a dream, you try and fail at starting a dream journal over and over. Up again, you make tea, put on some Britney. You stare out the kitchen window, out at the frozen yard, into the wind-faced hill, and you whisper, feel better. Then you think you're saying, no, I meant them, not every word, but every sound. So then after I read all the individual season poems, of course I had to write one with all of them. So this is called Spring, Summer, Autumn, Winter. which is also in Mandarin Chinese, just a way to refer to the 4 seasons in that order, just saying them: spring, summer, autumn, winter. I pushed my face toward the sleeping radiator. I smelled a form of justice. I wanted to be a poet. I waved my living hands, dead coupons. I watched him brush his teeth. His teeth glinted gorgeous. I stumbled, cartwheeled. I said, I will always fight alongside you in the fight against Tartar buildup. I said, I will. I said, thank God, without believing in thanks. I thought what my parents did, that wasn't poetry. I believed what white people said about my parents. I had to say, stop believing them. I suckled, pickled, made mistakes about octopi, wore a blue jockstrap and took pictures, accepted stickers of astounded apples from friends. I was a wind smooching another wind who had very good teeth. I was a name everyone in America thought they were saying right. Even he thought so, then asked, is that right? I pushed my face toward the noisy radiator, its clang and labor in here. In bed, I touched his voice in his belly. I touched his good night. He said it always like it was important. It was important. I believed in the silver millennium. I said, Sailor Neptune, one day a poem for you. I said, Sailor Neptune, teach me the deep submerge, the submarine reflection, the thunderously turquoise hair. I was a name in America and would forget I belonged to my teeth. I dropped a single wish down the cavernous mailbox. He would ask, is that right? He would bring a single microwave donut on a blue napkin at dusk. He would leave me alone with my poems. Oh, if I could lick all your toes at once, I would write that poem. I loved him, I told him. I loved him, so told him about the dream. The dream starred my parents, stars of a death metal band's debut music video. They danced like everyone was watching. It was important. Their arms were poems. They said, so what if we misspell auditorium, so fucking what? We'll always say your name, right? They pushed their faces toward me, their poems toward me. They leapt and thrashed. They were stars, stars, stars. I woke up weeping. Do you understand? I thought I could only fall asleep doing that. So sometimes I explain the Sailor Moon reference in the poem, and sometimes I don't, because I think it should just be common knowledge. So Sailor Neptune is one of the Sailor Scouts. She comes later in the series. The outer planet sailors come in a later season. And she's one of the queer characters. She's dating another Sailor Scout, Sailor Uranus. And when the series was dubbed in English for Cartoon Network, they decided not to make them a couple, and instead they made them cousins, which was very strange and awkward for some of the scenes. But yeah, Sailor Neptune, wonderful character. She has like this bright turquoise hair. I love that one of her weapons, like she fights with a mirror, and has like these reflective powers. Okay, I'll just read a couple more. So this is part of the change. Yeah, I think I'll read this newer poem. This is called Hello, like the Adele song, but, well, maybe it is just as melodramatic. Hello, salmon in the stream. Hey, bear by the stream. Howdy, salmon and bears who are dreams and not, who really do their salmon bear streamy things. Who truly stepped into my last night's mine creek at the former yet forever teacher's apartment, smaller than I thought it would have been, and the husband less beautiful than I thought he should have been. I was invited alongside a friend who was a bear in the gay sense. Hi, friend, we said, then sat on a small rose sofa, eating cheese, just feral hunks of cheese, no bread, 0 crackers. And why wasn't the husband cuter? He was supposed to be utter hunk, I'd heard. and I was supposed to be somewhere later or earlier, but couldn't get over that lack of hunkiness, nor the sheer fever stream of cheese. Was it provolone? In any case, I felt so far from alone. I felt like everyone in every lamp was saying hello. And eventually there was the main course, salmon, the pinkest dream on the largest platter made of art. I don't know how else to speak it. I would call it a pink cloud, but then that makes me think of pink cloud salad, a wobbly abomination no one on earth and heaven should ever again serve. The nerve of that. But this was not that. This was salmon on a salmon parade float. I loved it. I knew just how loved wobbly me was when my teacher said, Jeff sent this using, the post office. It took many stamps, and an argument, and a lawyer, and a litigious culture someone should really do something about. But how is it going? It's going lucky, said the sofa. We're lucky, said the teacher. Ridiculously, said the bear. Because Jeff made the skin so crispy, even though he doesn't like to eat that part. Because he's made of art, which means he said goodbye forever to nothing. Nothing made with love, even that pink fraud of a nightmare salad. So that, maybe I should explain it. Pink cloud salad, it's like a Jell-O salad, which is gross. What? Yeah.
Over dinner.
Amazing. Okay, I'll read two more. Actually, I'm going to read first this poem by... So I've been spending quality time with this book by Sharif Shanahan called Trace Evidence. It's beautiful. Highly recommend it. And I was just thinking about this poem because I turned 34 last month, and there's a series of poems in this book that are different ages, and this is 35th year. Dread remains. I keep looking for a thing I can't name, though I try purpose, meaning, presence. I circle my worst fear in life, which is my life. What to do with it, how to shape it, and so on. It's something like a tiger circling a cage inside a cage that I circle. It's a privilege, I know. Still, I can't land on a 5-year plan, so I return text messages and look for doors to the laundry room, the basement, the self. I ask questions I can manage. How may I be of service? And questions I can't. Why are we here? Do you think of us as here together? I try a new city every 2 to 4 years, then complain about a lack of continuity, of roots. Every morning I stretch out on my foam roller, make a protein shake, and take a shot of apple cider vinegar to lower my A1C. I moisturize, I sip tea. At night, when my body begs for a range of macronutrients, I stretch out across the couch and eat a handful of jelly beans, a domestic glamour shot, with anything on Netflix that runs long enough to be the background noise I need to avoid returning to those questions or looking for the name of the thing I'm looking for. And what I can't understand is that I know a dear older friend was right to remind me once, though it's returned to me again and again and again. You are actually very good at joy. Okay, I'll read 2 more. So this one, you just need to know the movie Home Alone. Cinematic masterpiece. Just such a heartwarming tale of family abandonment and botched burglary. Rewatching it as an adult, I was really taken aback by how violent it is. I'm like, wow, he really does some things to those robbers. So just have that in mind. This is called I Invite My Parents to a Dinner Party. In the invitation, I tell them for the 17th time, the 4th in writing, that I am gay. In the invitation, I include a picture of my boyfriend and write, you've met him 2 times. But this time you will ask him things other than, can you pass the whatever? You will ask him about him. You will enjoy dinner. You will be enjoyable. Please RSVP. They RSVP. They come. They sit at the table and ask my boyfriend the first of the conversation starters I slip them upon arrival. How is work going? I'm like the kid in Home Alone, orchestrating every movement of a proper family, as if a pair of scary yet deeply incompetent burglars is watching from the outside. My boyfriend responds in his chipper way. I pass my father a bowl of fishball soup. So comforting, isn't it? My mother smiles her best, sitting with her son's boyfriend, who is a boy, smile. I smile my hooray for doing a little better smile. Everyone eats soup. Then my mother turns to me, whispers in Mandarin, is he coming with you for Thanksgiving? My good friend is, and she went like this. I'm like the kid in Home Alone, pulling on the string that makes my cardboard mother more motherly, except she is not cardboard. She is already exceedingly my mother, waiting for my answer. While my father opens up a Boston Globe, when the invitation clearly stated, no security blankets. I'm like the kid in Home Alone, except the home is my apartment, and I'm much older, and not alone, and not the one who needs to learn, has to. Remind me what's in that recipe again, my boyfriend says to my mother, as though they have always easily talked, as though no one has told him many times what a non-linear slapstick meets slasher flick meets psychological pit he is now co-starring in. Remind me, he says, to our family. Okay. And I'll read this one. Wegmans is a supermarket chain. I think that's all you need to know. The School of Eternities. Do you remember the two types of eternity? How we learned about them in a Wegmans parking lot? When you turned on the radio, the classical channel? Why were they even talking about eternity? What did it have to do with the suddenly broody guitars? You had a peach Snapple. I remember the snappy kissy sound of the lid coming off in your hand. One type of eternity, they said, is inside of time, is endless time, life without death. We were inside our Toyota. I said, we need a new umbrella. Do you remember when we first rhymed? Do you remember the first time I asked you about the rain, the expression, it's raining cats and dogs, whether it was equally cats and dogs falling? Can you remember when you learned the word immortality? The hosts on the classical channel were okay. I thought you'd do a much better job. I remember saying so while you drove us home. Our apartment, our third. Remember the day we moved into our first, the boxes of books and boxes of books. My books. Our sweating up 3 flights of the greenest stairs. And you said never again, and the again and again, and the other type of eternity is outside of time, beyond it, no beginning, no end. I remember. Your hand, the lid, your hands, the steering wheel, your lips, the way you took a sip, gave me a kiss before starting to drive. Do you remember the first time you drove me home, before home meant where we both lived, the books on the shelves, the books in the closet when I ran out of shelves, the second apartment, West Texas, remember the dust, the flat, another type of eternity, that dusty sun. And driving to the supermarket, what was it called there? And that hand soap we'd get, which scent was your favorite? I don't remember what it was called, can't remember exactly the smell, but your hands after washing, I remember kissing them. Don't you remember when we thought only some things were ephemera? Can you remember when you learned the word ephemera, the word immortality? Probably the latter first, and isn't that something, immortality first, then menus and movie tickets? What was the first nickname, the 5th umbrella, the type of taco you ordered on our 16th trip? Remember driving? Remember when we thought the world of the world? Remember how I signed the letter explodingly yours? Do you remember you were driving? We were halfway home, only 8 minutes from Wegmans. Remember when we measured distance in terms of Wegmans? Like it was a lighthouse or pyramid or sacred tree. Remember when your name was Fluttersaurus Vex and mine wasn't? Remember when I lived like a letter falling in cartoonish cartoonish slow-mo down 4 flights of stairs? Did you picture a letter of the alphabet or a letter I'd written to you? Remember when I asked you about the rain, when the wizard jumped out, when I lied and you laughed, when I lied and I lied and I lied? Can you remember last night how I crossed my arms as though dead and arranged just so? How I pictured my face polished as though alive? And no, you can't remember that, since it happened while you were sleeping, and I wasn't. I was up, wondering why people always talk about death as sleep, and how much I love sleep, hate death. And have I told you about the student who said, I'm really, really afraid of death? Just like that, in class. It was fitting, because it was poetry class. Haha. And I loved it, her saying that. I wanted to say I loved it, but couldn't. I was thinking about you sleeping and me not, about me sleeping and you not, and what even is outside of time, beyond then, now. No thanks. I'd prefer the type of eternity where we are inside, are us. In last night's movie, good, not great. A stray piece of popcorn still under our coffee table. Do you remember when the world signed the letter, yours ephemerally? Remember when I asked you about the rain, the cats and dogs of it, if it was 50% cats, 50% dogs, 100% falling, and you said, of course, and you said, she's gotten, the flight's not till, I'm going to drive. I remember you driving to your mother, West Texas to upstate New York. You didn't make it in time, she had little time, then none. I remember your face pressed into my shoulder. I remember your mother was an endless, a question your face asked into my shoulder. How I wanted it to answer because I couldn't. I didn't go with you when I could have. I chose a poetry reading instead. Thought she'll be there, you'll be. Is memory the best eternity we can make? The only. And you said it's equal, the cats and dogs raining down, though in terms of overall volume. The rain is all the different breeds of cat, of dog, and see, there are more individual cats, since there are more very large breeds of dog. The cats have to balance things out with their number, but the dogs, don't you worry, they're raining down too. And their rain, absolutely, they're still rain, the cats and dogs. Lots of water for the plants, for the flowers, for the whole street, and our dusty car windows, for the cats and dogs on the ground, the cats and dogs that aren't rain, at least not yet. And maybe that's another eternity. The rainy type. I remember you drove us home. The radio was on. We made a sound like a lid coming off. Thank you.
Wow. I'm tempted to just ask the poets to read one more poem each. Should we do that and then have one question each? Or are there more questions? Please consider, if you have to go, you have to go. Please consider purchasing some of these amazing books on your way out, because there's more where they came from. They're all there. They're mostly there. What?
What do we feel like?
Maybe one more poem each, and then maybe one more question, then one more poem? No. One more poem, then a couple questions. One more poem each. Can you do it together? No? No! Both standing up. No? Too stagey? Can you?
I have to find another poem, because I didn't write other poems.
I mean, can you read Sans Serif? Got that?
Yeah.
Yeah, read that. It's in the middle of the book. It's only 40. Poetry's so good. I'm reading so long, like over and over. So I'm just really excited that this is happening.
Did I go to the mic?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That way we'll be able to hear.
One poem each, then a couple questions, and then please buy these books if you don't have them, and you can possibly record it. Like, you will not be sorry.
Here's the clip. This is a poem he was from. This is from also from Chez Nous. Sans serif. You know what serifs are, right? Everyone knows that. Okay, good. Sans serif. It's the opposite of Baroque, so I want none of it. Clean and spare, like Cassius, it has that lean and hungry look. Mercury's clipped heels, the rag of the body without breath. A chorus of alleluias, on the other hand, is not only opulent, but copious, a cornucopia of opinion which concludes that opera is work, the oak gold opus of the soprano, which does not oppress, yet presses against her chest like the green glass flacon de l'opéra held between her breasts to keep the cognac warm. Her notes hop from hope to hope, like the layers of opera cake, steeped in coffee syrup, buttercream, and ganache, rising in between, and a thin chocolate coat slipped over all. Its name is scrolled in glaze on the top, l'opera, finished with a lick of gold leaf.
I've never done this. This is, okay. I'll just read this one. We'll be gone after these brief messages. God stopped by in his magenta rowboat. I said, God, you have to stop stopping by if you're never going to tell me the meaning of life. God said, life is meaningless, while language often means too much. My grandmother stopped by and said, no, the meaning of life is love, the kind that produces children. Why don't you have a girlfriend yet? My mother stopped by and said, look, he's busy with his studies, stop asking. God got back in his turquoise steamship. Life is a joyful thing, he said. It's probably very good for you.